Hello, my name is Sammy Berk.
And I'm Ken Nebenzahl.
And we are here to introduce to you the Ogden Archive. In 1833, a small town of 350 people was officially incorporated and named Chicago. A year later, a man by the name of Charles Butler, a New York investor, came out to Chicago where he stayed at the Green Tree Tavern. There he met James Kinsey and they discussed the potential for a great city. 2 years later, Charles Butler invested $100,000 in 50 acres to be turned into 1,000 city lots. While he did not reside in Chicago, he sent his new brother-in-law, attorney William B. Ogden, to oversee his investments. William B. Ogden would later become Chicago's first mayor and throughout his lifetime play an integral role in the development and growth of the great city of Chicago.
It's one of those fortuitous happenings in the world of antiquarian materials that this collection turned up in an estate sale in suburban Chicago some time ago, and it was purchased by a very experienced Chicago collector, and he recognized the merit and the value, and while the collection needed some restoration and preservation, he did a great deal of historical research to determine the fact that this really is a group of manuscript maps that have miraculously survived that tell the history of the beginnings of the great city of Chicago, which is one of the more important mega cities of the world that grew in a very short period of time from just a few inhabitants in an Indian trading post until very quickly, remarkably quickly, it became the key to the West because of its location on the Great Lakes and being the key to maritime transport of cargoes and materials into the Mississippi Valley.
This collection is composed of the original surveyor's manuscript maps of the first lots that were developed in the city of Chicago and the primary investors backing them. This collection also includes a handful of proposed plans for the Chicago Dock and Canal Company, which played an integral role in the growing demand for Chicago's ability to transport raw materials and goods to the western frontier.
Well, one of the more exciting manuscripts is a good one to lead off with, and that is the first plotting of the first subdivision added to the original community of Chicago, and that's Wabansia, which is on the west side of the North Branch. We can see there the wisdom that was employed at the time. For example, all of these lots are divided not only by the perpendicular and horizontal main streets that surround them. In New York, people like to say that every hour is rush hour and every day is Friday because there's always a traffic jam, and a lot of it is precipitated because they don't have alleys, and those tall skyscrapers have to be serviced by all kinds of commercial vehicles, trucks of all kinds. It's interesting also that the owner of the subdivision was no other than James Kinsey, one of the pioneers of Chicago.
The next map, Butler, Wright, and Webster's edition of Chicago, dated September 22, 1839, details the holdings of three primary investors differentiated by the color and letters of their individual lots. Now, it should be noted that when Chicago became a town in 1833, it had roughly 350 residents. By 1840, the population had reached over 4,000. Another interesting aspect of the map to point out is the hydrologic detail of a small stream shown running into the main branch of the Chicago River. You can also see a light sketch of an old wagon road in pencil. What this shows is what the land looked like before the investors had arrived and what would soon become the River North area of Chicago, complete with the first names of all of their streets, named after the Great Lakes. The third map, Bushnell's addition to Chicago, dated September 5, 1842, shows another section of the River North area of Chicago, divided by three primary investors, which is also color-coded by block. What's important to note about this is just south of Lot 10, which now resides the Newberry Library, is Washington Square. It is known that these investors wanted to dedicate a square to the city of Chicago to be used for public purposes. This is the first known written recording of this dedication. On the map it reads, 316 feet square donated to the city of Chicago upon the condition that the same be enclosed by the city with a handsome post and board or picket fence within 5 years and kept enclosed forever for use as a public square. Washington Square, also known as Bughouse Square, is still enclosed with that fence today. The next three maps we'll be talking about are the proposed plans for the Chicago Dock and Canal Company and their ever-growing need to keep up with the demand of the import of raw materials and the export of goods to the western frontier. These particular maps show an area where ship traffic, railroad, and river barge would all meet to accomplish this goal. One industrial facility worth noting was William McCormick's Reaper Factory, which was very vital to the growth of Chicago. A few of the aspects that all these maps share are the extension of the shoreline into Lake Michigan, the dredging of ship basins, as well as canals, one of which being the Michigan Canal, which would later be named the Ogden Canal and used for industrial purposes until the 1990s, when the area was converted into shops, restaurants, and art galleries.
Taken together, this remarkable group of 30-some-odd maps that miraculously have remained together all these years dramatically demonstrate one of the critical eras in the development of the city and actually shows how that development was organized by those community leaders, infrastructure that sustained the remarkable growth. Here's this little Indian village in 1830 with a trading post on the north side of the Chicago River, and eventually, a couple of years later, a small military garrison on the south branch, and virtually in the wilderness or on the shore of Lake Michigan, developed into one of the great cities of the world. And this collection of maps demonstrates how that came about physically over the years.
It is our belief that this collection may have been owned by William B. Ogden himself, if not him, his brother Malin, or his attorney, Edwin Sheldon. Just as the collection was discovered as a whole, it is the owner's wish that it will be sold as a whole. What we've shown you here are some of the highlights of the catalog. There is much more within, and we encourage you to read through it. If you have any questions regarding this collection, please feel free to contact us here at Harlan J. Berk Limited.